Hello. Today I want to share with you a game played in 1962 in the Candidates Tournament between Viktor Korchnoi and Tigran Petrosian. So the game started with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, the Lopez, and we go down the main line with bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, castles, c3, d6, and here it's quite well known that the main line here is to go h3. And why do we go h3? Because White has set up his position in a way that he wants to push d4 next, right? He's played c3, and now he wants to play play d4. That is the most typical plan from White. So White tries to achieve that by first playing h3, because if we play d4 immediately, then Black can go bishop g4 and put some pressure on this d4 pawn. Now this is not bad for White because this is still theory, and White can continue by defending the pawn and can go down this line where it's a line, right? There's chances for both sides, and it's a complicated game. But this bishop g4 can be seen as quite annoying for White, which is why many White players, they prefer to start with h3, and so this has been pretty much the most popular line of the Lopez. Now, Black can continue with like knight a5 or bishop b7 or h6 or rook e8. There's many moves for Black here, and there's many plans. But today in the game, White played d3, which is slightly different from what we were just looking at. Now let's try to understand this move d3. d3 is less ambitious, right? Because we're only pushing the pawn one square, not two, which means that maybe for now we're going to hold off on trying to push the pawn to d4 later, because then we'd be kind of just losing a tempo, right? So instead, what White is trying to do is he's trying to first maneuver his pieces to better squares. Maybe through this way or through knight e3. And after that, he'll slowly build his position and see what is going on. And maybe at the right time, he will play d4. So, the main line for Black here, there's around three. There's around three that comes to mind, right? We want to play maybe knight a5. We could play bishop g4. We could play maybe bishop b7. These are all very logical moves. In fact, there's a game between Gukesh and Pragnananda a few months ago where it continued knight a5, bishop c2, and here the point of knight a5 becomes clear. We play c5, and now it's harder for White to achieve d4. Can you play it here? I think you can play it here, but this is kind of this is a tempo down compared to the main line with d4 immediately. I'll show you. That position was a tempo down compared to after h3, knight a5, bishop c2, c5, d4. Because instead of using one tempo on a useful move like h3, instead in that other position, back here, White has spent one tempo playing d3, d4. So yeah, this is less desirable, but it's still a playable position. Okay. So after 9.d3, Black plays nowadays it's considered quite rare, but the idea makes sense, right? Black plays knight d7. And what he wants to do is he wants to bring this knight over to the queen side, and perhaps this could help because he could play like a5, a4, and this knight could be useful on the queen side. Also, he clears this f6 square for the bishop. And by doing so, he can improve his bishop's position. Maybe play g6 later and fianchetto it. Now white continued knight bd2, and black went knight b6. Again, bishop f6 was also a perfectly fine idea here, and white could continue knight f1, and here it's kind of black's choice, I guess. We could go knight c5 and attack this bishop. He could go bishop c2, but then this is kind of nice. I could go knight e6, and I have some control over this d4 square. Maybe in the future I could also go knight g5. So, this position seems quite nice for black. But also, white isn't forced to go bishop c2 here. He can go bishop d5. And maybe this is a little more incisive. We could go bishop b7 now. And maybe d4. Now if black takes. I mean, this doesn't make much sense for black. This looks quite bad. Like, white's just gonna go bishop e3, and like, there's not much coordination between our pieces. Maybe black shouldn't take. Maybe he just go back. And I guess we've provoked white into playing d4, which is, I don't know if it's good or bad thing. We could go knight b6 next and see how it is. But yeah, this is there's quite a lot of things happening in this position. Now black can try to exchange the bishops. That could be a more sensible plan. Now, yeah, white is basically forced to trade these bishops, and yeah, I wouldn't really mind this position because, I mean, next we can go like g6 and artificially fianchetto our bishop, and I think in the future we would be trying to go c5 and try and play on the queen side. Of course, if white's probably never going to go d5, this move is quite bad, because now we're just going to go bishop g7, and we have like this typical King's Indian counterplay. Like, there's no point for white to close the center here, so of course like white shouldn't be playing that. But let's say like after a normal move like queen d2, I think that c5 could make some sense. Maybe it's a bit early though, but yeah, this seems playable for black. Also, he doesn't have to. We don't have to be so quick. We could play like rook e8 or bishop g7. But I don't love bishop g7 because I feel like I'm just allowing white to play bishop h6. So yeah, like this position should be playable for both sides. One more way black could continue in this position is to go knight b6. And now, I guess there's a couple of plans. Like, we could even try d5, which is why white goes knight e3, to prevent d5. Now, we can continue with knight a5, bishop c2, and maybe c5. And this, again, is like quite a typical expansion for black, but it's quite good here. It looks quite good. It's going to be tough for white to organize something, I think. He needs to play maybe h3 here to prepare knight g4. That's kind of cool. But I'll play knight c6 and bring my knight back. Maybe to control this d4 square a little more, but also my knight on a5 was quite bad. Now I can continue knight g4. And here, like, let's say we take. I think white should be happy in this position because there's going to be some counterplay with like maybe king g2 and rook h1. I think that is possible. So maybe instead we could play bishop e7. But white is organizing like quite a bit of an attack actually. This is quite good for white. Could continue like this, I guess. And actually, can I play 95? I don't think I can play 95. 95 takes. Or 96. Yeah, like, well, actually this position isn't clear. Queen c7 and bishop e3. Oh, I can play knight c4. No. So white probably isn't going to take that. He could go knight f5, which is much stronger. Yeah. Okay. Knight takes e5 was bad, but knight f5 should be quite strong, I think. Because I mean, there's just there's like lingering pressure with these knights. They're well placed. So black is in a tough spot here. But yeah, that's why instead black could just take this and then maybe go. Whoa, I think. Yeah, if I go bishop e6 here, white could have like this, which could be really annoying. Because if we take, of course, there's mate. So bishop h6 is actually a very strong move here. Yeah, like we can't, of course, like this would be horrible too because, I mean, white just exchanges everything, wins a rook. So, so here, like, actually we need to be a little bit careful. We have to exchange this knight, which means that the knight on g4 is actually quite a strong attacker. Now I guess like the game could continue in a few ways, like maybe bishop f6, queen d3, and rook c. Oh, maybe I don't want to go rook c8 because there's g5. Oh wait, sorry. There's e5 and I lose. e5 and there's two threats. So yeah, no, black has to play g6 here, but to be honest, I don't hate black's position. It actually seems it's pretty playable, I think. So this is not bad for black at all. Cause like our bishop is strong. Our knight can come to c4. I mean, this pawn is weak, yeah, so it's going to take white a while to develop his bishop on c1. So I think black still has okay chances in this position. So that's a possible way to play for black, to go bishop f6 and continue with knight c5 or knight b6. Typically to go c5 later, but anyways, black played Korchnoi, played knight b6 immediately, and yeah, the plan is to probably go knight a5 and c5, or even a5, a4. You know, there's quite a bit of plans in this Ruy Lopez. Both sides have many options. So now white continues with his expected development, knight f1. This is basically like the most typical way for white to maneuver his pieces. Knight b1, knight d2, knight f1. Yeah, so to me, like, I don't know why, but this bishop e6 is always like standing out to me. I don't think it's very good, but I'm not too sure why. Like, I just want to trade this bishop, but I don't think there's actually any benefit towards doing so. A game here continues with knight g3. Bishop takes b3. I guess this is also fine. Like, oh, white continue with a takes b3 here. Interesting. And rook e8. Rook e8 for what? Maybe, I guess you go bishop f8, but I don't know. And queen b3 here. It's also a interesting move. I guess we could go knight a5 still. However, like, white can attack our knight, which I don't know if it's significant. Like, I can just go back with knight d7, and I'll push c5 next. So white loses a tempo off of c5, so I don't think that is great. Like, even d4, c5. So one more way is to play queen a3. And I could voluntarily play knight b7. It's typically not a great square for the knight, but it's hard to say. I don't think I can play this though. I might have to go back, which I wouldn't want to like. So I don't know. After queen b3, I guess it's just like it's really hard to say what's going on here. Maybe I can go bishop f6, yeah, bishop f6, but then knight h5. So actually, I think a more logical plan would be to play g6 here, and again with the final idea of bishop f6, bishop g7. But yeah, then if this is the case, right? I don't love my bishop, right? This is a dark squared bishop, and we have many pawns on dark squares. So I guess that could be one justification towards why bishop e6 isn't like played more often. It might not be so accurate because we want to keep this light squared bishop for the future. Although the light squared bishop can also become quite strong. Anyways, black played knight a5, which is, it was an idea that we saw many times in this video. And of course, our next move is to play c5. Now, white has no choice but to go bishop c2. He doesn't want to lose the light squared bishop for no reason. Now, c5, as expected, knight e3. And now you might notice that this d5 square is kind of weak. So we might need to watch out for that. But like, as long as we have this knight on b6, it shouldn't be a big issue. That might actually be a reason why Petrosian played knight f6, knight d7, knight b6, because like here on b6 it's slightly safer I would say. Like sometimes white has an idea to play like imagine if this knight was still on f6, white could play bishop g5 and maybe trade off this important knight, and then our d5 square would be very, very weak. So that's a reason towards why black can choose to develop through knight f6, knight d7, knight b6. That goes knight e3. And as is very usual, we always play knight c6. Like this knight on a5 was doing nothing. The only reason why we played knight a5 in the first place was so that we could get out of the way for this c pawn. But now once we've played this c pawn out, we can just move our knight back. It's more useful doing things in the center. Now white goes h3, and again we saw this earlier. The idea is that in the future, knight g4 can become useful, but also in the very far future, maybe white needs some space for his king. Like he needs to create a hiding space in case there are back rank mates. Now black goes bishop e6, controlling d5 further. Now like, there's always like this. There's this lingering plan for white to play knight f5. Now, doesn't seem too strong though. Like, even though, right, here, I think what makes the most sense is to just take immediately. Like, we can play bishop f6, but this seems really submissive. You don't want a knight on f5, right? You don't want to deal with a knight on f5 most of the time. it's possible white can even go g4 here. That's a possibility too. So I don't think it makes much sense to allow white to cement his knight on f5. That's why, okay, bishop takes f5 is quite a natural move. And now one thing that happens to the structure is that our d-pawn is now like kind of free to move forward. And this can become quite important in the future. Now, many games here continue with bishop f6. Now, why bishop f6? We're trying to defend this e5 pawn so that we can push this d pawn. You know, with like 4 pawns, you know, side by side like this, like they can be quite strong. Now the most obvious move from white is to continue pushing his pawns, but I think we can just defend that with h6 is enough, because white is never really going to be able to play h4, so and then this kind of just stops white's pawn advance in his tracks. Game. There's also a game here with a4 and now rook e8. Now rook e8. Of course, we're just trying to prepare this even better, or maybe not. Maybe no. I think it is for d5. Now bishop e3 and black chooses to go b4, which is interesting. I mean, it's not that interesting. It's quite natural. The game continues with a5 and knight d5. And yeah, I guess next we're going to take this bishop, which is really nice. Unless he goes bishop d2. But then even then, we can go knight f4. Like, let's say bishop d2, knight f4. Let's say if white doesn't want to give it, I don't think it's good for white to give up the bishop. Like, as soon as he gives up this bishop, there's like big problems, because suddenly our bishop is very strong. I like this for black. So that's why king h2 is probably necessary. And what could be your next move? Maybe even d5 at this point. Like, well, black has built up his position quite nicely. Like, okay, this doesn't seem like a good move either. Now even knight b4, I think, because like let's say if he takes. Now like queen d6 is coming. And this bishop, like, well, white's dark squares are extremely weak, very very weak. So this bishop will be an extremely valuable asset, and black should be much better here. So, yeah, this knight f5 actually isn't such a great move, because white is giving us this d5 square, so we can push d5 ourselves, or sometimes even go knight d5. There's some options. So yeah, knight f5 is a bit early in this scenario, in this instance. So white goes d4 immediately. He's trying to make things happen in the center. And okay, we kind of have to take. White is threatening to play d5 next. And if we didn't take this pawn, then we would be moving one of these pieces. But we just moved these pieces to their ideal squares, right? Knight a5 back to c6, bishop to e6, like, these are the squares that our pieces want to be on. So, of course, we're not going to move them again. That's why we're going to take these pawns. Now, white takes again. Again, we have to take this pawn. And there actually could be a difference between knight takes d4 and e takes d4. Because e takes d4, like, sometimes, I'm not sure if it's here. I don't think it's here. But sometimes, like, white can, you know, have an extra move like knight f5, which could scare the opponent. But no, I don't think it's very scary here, because like I can take bishop f6, and black is up a pawn, and it's not a bad pawn. Like, even though they're doubled, like, I think white will find it hard to create things, because these two pawns will like they will subdue the bishop pair from white. Okay, so knight takes d4, knight takes d4, e takes d4, queen takes d4. And now we've reached this typical structure in the Relopez. Always after white plays d4, there's a isolated pawn for black on d6, but very rarely is this pawn like, such a huge weakness. Sometimes it's an asset, because now we have a strong square in e5. So it's kind of a imbalanced pawn structure. It's an isolated d pawn, of course, but it's not horrible. In many cases it's very playable for black, and here is no different. So black plays rook c8, gaining a tempo. Oh, not gaining a tempo. There's no tempo on the bishop. But the c file is nice. The c file is typically in black's control, not white's, because white has these like two glurgy, like clunky bishops on the c file, and like it's hard for white to actually organize his rooks on the c file before black does. So typically black is in control of the c file, which is one more thing that compensates for the isolated d pawn. Now white goes queen d3. And as we saw earlier, there's a sneaky tactic from white. Like, if black went bishop f6, you can pause the video here if you want to find the tactic, but I think it's quite obvious. White goes e5, and yeah, he's attacking a bishop and he's threatening mate. And I guess the best thing black could do here is to just like take this, because what else? There's nothing better, I think. And I mean, I can take this pawn too. There's some ways to continue. I mean, this is just very bad for black. White could also just accept the extra exchange, and this would also be pretty much winning. Maybe with the queen, I don't know. Sometimes I make unnatural moves for the opponent when I'm not on their side. I don't know. Sometimes I have to flip the board to play the best moves. But anyways, that's why instead of bishop f6, because of course it's like such a natural move, instead we have to play g6 first, and that is what Petrosian did. g6, and next bishop f6 is ready to go. Now white goes bishop b3, and he's trying to trade the light squared bishop because white is trying to exert his influence over this d5 square. Because again, this is an isolated pawn, and it's good to blockade the isolated pawn. But in this case, it's more of an outpost than a blockade. Like, this pawn was never moving anywhere. We all knew that. Maybe we could have played d5, actually. Yeah, maybe. Actually, this pawn could have moved somewhere, but now it's not possible because of bishop e3. Now, let's consider our options here as black. Can play bishop takes b3, and white can recapture even with the a pawn. I don't know about this one though. It's attacking a pawn, which is quite annoying. But actually, I think knight d7 is fine here. And now, like, okay, we do kind of get molested on the d5 square, but I can go knight c5 now. Like, my dark squares aren't horribly weak somehow. I think it's fine. Like, I don't think white should take this bishop, actually, because even though it looks like our dark squares can be weak with this bishop and all, but I don't know, to the eye it doesn't seem that weak. Where does this queen go? This queen, like, oh, sorry, not there. Maybe, like, yeah, it's not even easy. Like, queen g3 with knight takes. And it's still not determinate because like he has queen e3, and yeah, this position is losing for black because this pin I think is overwhelming, like d5 f3, and we lose this knight. So not knight takes e4. This could be white's next move. This position might be good for white though. It probably is. Or maybe not. Like we could go rook c6 and double. Again, like I think this knight can do a good job of defending our king in the long term, because with the knight on like e6, right, it controls g7 and it controls g5, and like, you know, what else do you really need in this position? And f4, like those are kind of white's crucial invading squares if he did need to go on the dark squares, and if we can cover that, I think it's all fine. So bishop takes b3 is certainly an option. A takes b3 is, yeah, a takes b3 is actually quite strong, I think. Okay, and also maybe white can prevent us from playing knight c5, but then I can go knight e5, and let's say like queen b3, rook c6, knight d5, queen d7, and this knight again, like not again. This knight on e5 is actually quite nice. Like the outpost is an outpost here, and we have an outpost maybe on c4. So this position is definitely tenable for black. One thing I was curious though, I didn't cover this one. After knight d5, knight c5, white doesn't have to take this bishop, right? By comparison, I would say that this knight is way more strong than this bishop. So to take this bishop with the knight would be a positional error. Instead, maybe like, well, what am I play such weird moves when I'm not oriented in the right side of the board. Again, maybe queen g3. And the b4 is a threat, so I don't know. I can go bishop f6 here. And next to threaten maybe bishop e5. But maybe he has f4. It's probably more strong for white. Or is it a weakness? You never know. Queen g3, bishop f6, and it's hard to say. Like, what if he goes b4 now? Then I can go knight f4. He can't play b3. He can't play b3. So this position should be something. Like bishop f4. Things are happening. Like if I go rook c6, takes e5. Again, somehow I don't think the dark squares are so weak for black, but this, I think white is better here. Like if we flip the board, how does it seem for white? It seems pretty good for white. Like maybe I can play rook a3, rook f3, and there could be some initiative on the queen side. So yeah, no, I think this is not so great for black. It's probably not ideal. Also, we didn't cover queen b3, but I think this is less important. Like, I think black is doing very well here because I can just play bishop f6 next. And I mean, if black is allowed to play bishop f6, he should be doing fine. It's all about like when you allow your opponent to play something. Some things, like, you should always be preventing them to play, and I think bishop f6 is one of those moves, because as soon as he plays bishop f6, like, I think what black is equalized. Like, knight c4 is next. This bishop is strong at f6, very, very strong. So yeah, this should be around equal. Anyways, bishop takes b3 still wasn't too great because of a takes b3. Instead, black went knight c4. Now, what is knight c4 for? Knight c4, we are playing so that we don't have to trade the bishop. And I guess also to not be forced to open the a file. But knight c4, and of course, like, white isn't going to take like this because I win. It's not going to take like this because, like, that's just stupid. But it's good to check. It's always good to check every possible move from your opponent. And I think, yeah, the one that makes the most sense here is to play knight d5. Knight d5 is an annoying move. And if we had to choose one, right? This bishop or this bishop, I think we choose this bishop. Because this bishop has great potential on this long diagonal. While this bishop is just kind of... It's just kind of here. It's along for the ride, but it's not crucial. So I have to say goodbye to this bishop. And white took with the queen. Of course, like, you don't want to take with the e-pawn because immediately all the pressure against this pawn is gone. Like, black, I think we could be like in an argument of black is better. Yeah, black must be like somewhere close to better because this pawn is weak and we are well coordinated. So this is a good position. Anyways, like, e takes d5 is not a human move. Queen takes d5 is way more natural. Now, black played bishop f6, rook b1, and I mean, rook b1, that's not very, it's really conspicuous. The idea is so that next we can develop this bishop, maybe to f4. f4 seems like the best square, pressuring d6. I mean, notice that, you know, after rook e8, white still can't really go bishop f4. I guess he can. But I can go maybe rook c5. I mean, this queen is a little bit weak and... yeah. Instead, like, white chose to play rook d1. Rook d1. But after rook d1, I think it's really obvious we want to play queen e7 here. Now bishop takes c4, rook takes c4, queen takes d6, queen takes c4, and at this point it's very safe to say that black is equalized. Like, everything has been developed. You know, black has achieved a lot. Like, he's achieved his dream position, honestly, because this bishop is like free. It's free on this long diagonal. We have this entire e file and the c file. So I think it's very possible to say that black is already better. Oh, sorry. I need to get rid of these arrows. So one more thing. It looked like to me for a split moment that I could play queen takes f6 because of queen takes b1, bishop h6. And you know, it looks like we're getting mated here. But there's queen d4. And this kind of stops white in his tracks and no mate for him. So taking this bishop is not possible. He goes bishop e3 and rook e6 or rook c6. I think they should be both fine. Honestly, I might prefer rook c6 because in the game, black continued rook e6 and he allowed, you know, like, it's possible. It's always possible that there could be some things along this back rank. So I think the safer option would just be rook c6. But He could have his own reasons. Um, but yeah, he went rook e6, queen b8, king g7, b3. He needs to protect this pawn because next black was going rook c2 and he's going to attack this pawn. So he might as well just move it first and get it over with. Now rook c2, and Korchnoi is not a wimp. He will not just submissively defend his pawn. Like, nobody will do that. Instead, he plays rook c1. And the idea here is to go on his little tactic with rook c8 and mate. But, of course, he's not going to fall for that. He's just going to play rook ec6, and now, black has very good control over the c-file. Now it continues rook takes c2, rook takes c2, and now a3. There's not much he can do. If black's not going to trade everything, white's not going to trade everything because, well, first of all, I am winning your queen. But even then, something like rook d2 is also pretty horrible because same thing. So you can see white is in a very tough spot. To be forced to play a3 is not something any player wants to do. Now rook c3, queen d6, and black continues here with bishop e5. Now this is quite a strong move. Because you might have noticed already that this pawn on a6 is hanging. So why did he just leave this pawn hanging? I have a few theories. This one seems a bit far-fetched, but it's actually possible to play rook takes e3, and here the dark squares are terribly, terribly weak for white. Next, queen, but I don't see anything I don't see a mate. Oh, sorry. What does this play out to? I don't know. This is perpetual. Because if black cannot prove anything, then it's just going to be a draw. So what was Petrosian's intentions behind bishop e5? Could maybe go queen c2, because now there is actually some pressure along the back rank. So he can't move off. If he moves off, we go queen c1 or queen b1. Queen b1 is more normal. I guess rook e1, but then there's quite a initiative. How is this position? This position is still equal, I think. Let's see with the engine. It is rook takes e3. Rook takes e3, king h1, and queen takes b3. I was thinking about it, I just didn't. I didn't believe in it. I was not too sure, but I guess there's plenty of compensation, of course, because white's king will be forever weak. And second of all, we are up one pawn, and yeah, it's mainly like White's king is very, very weak. I guess over time, like we could try somehow. Like this rook probably can't move off the first rank, or else this king will be too weak. So in the future, one way for black to convert his advantage is probably like queen b3, bishop b2, and eating this a3 pawn. Okay, so that's why that was his master plan against queen takes a6. And since they're both GMs and very smart, White played queen d2, and now rook takes c3 is not possible. So like if I were playing, I would have just played rook takes b6. Wait, no, I would not have played that because there's bishop h6. I would not even I would play that, and this should be losing. I think queen d8 is stronger, and like this, there must be a mate somewhere. Oh, g4, I think. g4 is very strong, and like I think it's just game over soon. I don't see a mate, which is very annoying. Oh, queen e8, king f6, and rook d6, and this should be winning. So of course, like bishop h6 is being threatened. So play h5, and now in response to bishop h6, then of course you can play king h7, and all is well. He can't invade yet because his bishop is hanging. Okay, so White plays rook e1, and now he's threatening to win our queen by bishop h6 check, and that's why I play queen f5. Cause and effect. Queen d1, rook d3. Now queen b1. Queen c2. What happens? You can pause the video here and try to find it out. But it's rook takes e3, and black is winning. So queen b1, and what could black's next move be? It's queen d7. And I think this is like kind of a rerouting, because this queen kind of wants to be on d5, where it can entice this pawn, well, I guess like cause this pawn to move forward to b4, and then it would be a huge weakness. Like these two pawns are like fixed weaknesses, which are the worst kind of weakness, So queen d7, and next we're trying to play queen d5. Now queen c1, bishop c3, rook f1, and queen d5 finally. White is playing b4 now, and yeah, Petrosian did exactly what I just said. He has fixed the two queenside pawns on the same color as his bishop. So just hypothetically, imagine these queens were off the board. And this is an easy win for black, because in this endgame, right, White is on the short end of the stick here. Like these a3 and b4 pawns will be taken by the bishop on c3 so quickly. But anyways, the queens are still on the board, and black continues with queen b3. So these pawns will still be taken off the board very, very quickly. Bishop c5, bishop f6, queen f4. There's always resources from your opponent. He's trying to play bishop f8 now, and if White can, try and prove our king is weak, if he is able to do that, then our extra pawns on the queen side will not matter. Like, for example, right? No, this is bad. This is very, very bad, because now he's threatening to go queen h8, king e7, rook e1. And say we play king g1 like a fool, and play rook e1 now. And yeah, there is no defense, actually. There's no defense to rook e1, rook h8. Which is unfortunate, but also deserved. So after queen f4, queen e6, protecting against bishop f8. Now queen c1, rook c3, and finally Petrosian captures his first pawn. Now this b4 pawn is also kind of easy pickings because he smartly fixed these pawns on the dark squares. Now rook e1, and a very, very simple, like I would call rook e1 a mistake, or at least a practical mistake, because with more pieces on the board, there's always more fighting chances. But rook e1 actually walks right into a very fast simplification of all the pieces, and it's not rook a1. Rook a1. There's still queens on the board, and actually this might not be so good. Like imagine this. Suddenly, like, white also has his own counterplay, which is really annoying. Or even trading off all the pieces so that queens are only left. Like this position, I don't know. Actually, no, this position. Actually, yeah, this might be a draw. This is definitely a draw because there's no way for black to push his pawns, and there's no way for black to win this b4 pawn easily. So this position is a draw, like, because as soon as the queen tries to do any sort of operation, the king will be left weak, and the white queen can come and also do its own thing. So no, these are incorrect ways of trading off the pieces, and it's quite self-explanatory. You want to trade in the way that there's only one set of pieces left, and that is the bishop pair. I wouldn't call this a bishop pair. So there's only bishop versus bishop. So that's why he plays queen takes e1, exclamation mark. Queen takes e1, rook a1, queen takes a1. If queen takes a1, like bishop takes a1, like black should be winning this very easily. King f6, king e6, and like just win this b4 pawn. It's dead lost. White tries to improve, but not by much, by playing king f1, so that once we liquidate everything, at least his king has been brought a bit closer. But this should still be a loss. Now, again, great endgame technique by Petrosian. Instead of mulling it out slowly with toughing it out slowly with like bishop b2, king f6, which should also be winning, I think. Should also be winning. There's an even faster way to convert this endgame, and that is by going a5. Very nice move, because now we're threatening to make a passed pawn. It'd be crazy not to take this pawn. And now we play bishop c3, check, king d1, and bishop takes a5, and we have created a passed pawn. And a passed pawn, in king versus pawn, king and pawn in games, we know that even one extra pawn is winning, right? It's the same case with, in many cases, with bishop versus bishop endgames. One pawn is frequently enough to win the game. And here with a passed pawn like this is definitely winning. Because black can leave this pawn on the dark square, and not like this. This is awkward. Like, to leave a bishop on a5 it's stupid. But in a better way, black can leave his pawn in b4, or he doesn't need to leave it on b4. He can just leave it on b5. And white will need to tend to this pawn, right? White will need to tend to this passed pawn, and then black can bring his own king and gobble up the kingside pawns. So this is a very, very technical but easy conversion. Bishop d4 check, king f8, king c2, king e7, f3, king d6, bishop d3, and king d5. Black has brought his king to the center, which is like really customary in endgames. King b3, king c6. He's trying to play bishop b6 and get control of this diagonal. Like this bishop has been limiting the king, like Moses parting the water. You don't want to do that. You want the water to come back together. So king c6 and bishop b6. And next, we can play bishop d4. Sorry, bishop d4. And like king c5. And can work our way from there. So bishop d4, bishop b6, bishop f6, bishop c5, bishop b2, king d5, bishop c3, king e6. And again, this is like what I had predicted. All black needs to do is keep his bishop and this pawn side by side, because in this case, it will be impossible for white to just like easily take this b5 pawn. And now that the pawns are all in light squares, the dark squares are ripe for invading by the king. You see all these dark squares on this. King's just gonna So white doesn't want to, just submit so easily. So it plays g4. Now, king d5, bishop f6, bishop d6, bishop b2. Now f5, important move, f5, because black has started to tell white he has to make a decision now. He has to make a decision as to how he's going to continue with these pawns, because previously they were limiting this king. This king could not come over. There was a barrier, but now with f5 he is destroying this barrier. g6 f5, g6 f5, bishop c3, and f4, important. Now there's a clear path for this king. I've noticed in endgames it's very important to make sure that you know where your king is going. And here, you might think first, oh, I can play king e6, king f5, king g5, king h4, and try and win the pawn like this. But actually that fails. That is not a correct plan, because let's just say I try to carry out that plan, right? Oh, here's bishop e1. Oh wait, well sorry. I did not mean to play it like that. Let's say it like this, yeah. Now, he has bishop e1, and the king is not allowed to cross over. Border patrol. So instead, this is not the way for the king to move forward. Instead, plays b4 now. b4. Also one of my predictions. Okay, b4. And b4 is kind of just limiting this bishop, limiting this bishop. And hypothetically, if white chose to take this, if white chose to take this pawn like this, we would trade off the bishops and have a winning king pawn in game, because our king is way more close to the pawns. So white plays bishop f6, and now the idea of b4 becomes way more clear. We play bishop e5, and it's to anchor this bishop to the c3 square. Actually, this was not even necessary. I can't do it anymore because bishop takes f4. So Petrosian plays king d4, nice move, sacrificing the pawn. And king e3. Oh my god. King e3, king c4, and king takes f4. 3. And the game is over. Korchnoi resigns because this is just easily winning. I'll just win. Oh, one thing to be careful though is that this might look a bit stupid. Imagine black was not very smart and he allowed the king to cross over. Then notice that this bishop and the pawn's promotion square, they're not the same color. And if they're not the same color, this endgame is actually a draw. Of course, these two players are grandmasters and they wouldn't fall for such easy things. Instead, black can just play bishop takes f4, king here, and yeah, king h2. He controls these two squares, and this endgame is winning. All I have to do is bishop a7, king g1. I win. So yeah, this was the game the 16th round of the candidates between Viktor Korchnoi and Tigran Petrosian. There's quite some interesting positional themes, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you. Have a good day.